All right, so we are here on a bonus episode of Hill Climbers, and we've got a couple really big announcements that I'm super excited about. If you're watching the podcast here, we have Franco Martins as a guest this week, and not only is he a guest, Franco has also expressed interest in helping out produce the show, and I have very willingly, with a lot of excitement and fanfare, said yes. I have never necessarily wanted to do all of the podcast production and marketing and content myself. So when Franco raised his hand, I thought, man, this is a blessing, and timing is really so good, because I think we've had a couple years of producing the show and we've kind of established what it is. And what a perfect time to bring on a partner like Franco. And we definitely want to introduce Franco. So I guess just to kick it off, can you share about where you're from, and I guess maybe how you arrived in Austin?
For sure, yeah. So I'm originally from Brazil, grew up in Florida, all throughout many different places. My parents were very entrepreneurial, and so that took us from Miami to West Palm Beach to Orlando. I went to school up in the Northeast, and then as I was about to graduate in 2019, really wanted to look for a young, vibrant place, and Austin just had everything that I could have possibly wanted. So I enjoyed the heat. I enjoyed Austin on a couple of visits leading up to graduation. I was going to start my career in construction, and there was a job opportunity lined up here. And so, yeah, late 2019, moved down here and never looked back.
And I guess you're used to the heat in Brazil and then Florida, right? So that I'm envious of you. I don't think I'll ever really love the heat here. But can you tell us about the job that you took and what you've been up to for the last few years?
Yeah, for sure. So originally, when I moved down here, I started at DPR Construction. They're a large commercial general contractor, originally based out of Redwood City, California, actually, but offices nationwide, one of the top five in terms of volume commercial builders. I started as a project engineer there, so like on the project management track, helped build the Charles Schwab domain campus, and then really something I was excited about was to build the Waterloo Park project. It's a performance pavilion right next to the Capitol, has 68,000 individual plants all over it. It's beautiful, hosts concerts
Hmm.
all the time now. We built it during COVID, so that was a hell of a ride for sure. And yeah, so that's originally what drew me to Austin. After a couple years there, went to Icon Technologies, a construction technology company. They built giant robots that 3D print homes. We use AI and software and other things as well, but found my career going in the operations route. So I was the director of operations for that company, and we built the first 100 home 3D printed neighborhood up in Georgetown.
Georgetown is like 35-40 minutes north of the city here. So yeah, just a 3D printed neighborhood, right basically 30 minutes away. So wanted to ask you about this because Icon is one of the like buzziest startups in Austin, and I guess how much capital has been raised? Do you know the valuation off the top of your head? Or
Yeah, so the company started in 2018. They did a big round in 2020, 2021. So we've raised about $500 million. That was a couple years ago now. And so we're still working through that capital, scaling, building, and the company is doing really well.
cool. Yeah, and I guess can you share a little bit just about your experience there and what led you to take some time off?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I started my career at DPR and then was really looking for the bleeding edge, the cutting edge. I'm obsessed with innovation and kind of like this super intense environment. And so Icon was the perfect place. And yeah, like I was there for just over 3 years, 9 to 5, throw that out the window. It's like a passion project more than anything, all day long. And when you're not there, you're thinking about it. So like you mentioned, Georgetown's 30 minutes away. I was there before 7 a.m. for maybe a year in a row. And so it really takes a toll in terms of like the grind set that you have to have in order to succeed at a company like that. I wouldn't have changed anything. I've already made lifelong friends and plan to continue making them at that company. And like, it was awesome, but certainly a hard grind. I had a couple health issues here a couple months ago, and that was a big spark for me to say, hey, wait a second. I've gotten a little bit away from my roots. Wasn't exercising as much as I wanted to be. I wasn't sleeping as well as I should have been. I wasn't giving the time and energy to my wife that I wanted to be giving. And so a combination of a lot of those things and, the goodwill of the company and the team that I was surrounded by at Icon offered me the opportunity to take a couple months off and do a reset. So it's been now 3 weeks that I've been on a little sabbatical here, and hence the reason why I reached out to you, Sam, and was looking to spend some time doing something that I felt like I could get really passionate about, and was very different than managing a team of 150 or so people. So that's a little bit of the journey there, and why I'm taking a little bit
Yeah,
of time. And
that,
yeah.
thank you for sharing, and just to put in perspective what Franco and those 150 people were doing. I think you mentioned you guys could 3D print a house in like 72 hours. Yeah.
It depends on the shape configuration of the house, right? We had some like tiny homes we could probably print in that duration if we were just chugging
Mhm.
24/7 and things were working well. But I think for context here, like a 2,000 square foot home, which is what we were printing out there in Georgetown, we were printing all the exterior and interior walls. So the slab was traditional. And then after we printed the walls, you'd come in with plumbers and roofers and things like that. But that wall system for a 2,000 square foot home, we could print in about 7 days. And that's not working 24
7
7.
days. Okay.
Yeah.
7 days is remarkable. And yeah, I mean, from what you shared, it was all systems go for 12 hours a day, right? So
Yeah, and it was actually 15 hours a day, and it was a hell of a journey. Like the beginning of the project, we had one printer out there. By the end of that project, we had 12 systems up and running full force
mm,
and printing things in 7 days. So like the learning curve was pretty relentless. And by the time we finished that project, we really felt like we had a product that we could scale with, which is really what the company's up to right now.
great. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you also. This is a great story. How you got into bike riding? It was sort of circuitous. So can you share that story as well?
For sure, yeah. So I ran track and field and cross country in college. I was obsessed with running. I was obsessed with competing, getting better every day. So I first got introduced to cycling as kind of a punishment. When I'd get injured, when I'd get hurt, I'd have to watch my friends run by me as I was stuck on the stationary trainer in the depths of winter, really wishing that I was out there with a team. So never really gave it a second thought. But as I graduated and got into the real world, life gets hectic, and, exercise kind of was deprioritized for me. And I was really struggling to find the joy in running, because as a competitive person, I always knew that it'd be incredibly difficult for me to achieve the PRs and things that I had in the running arena.
And I gotta interrupt your PRs in the 5 and 10K. Please share them with the audience.
Yeah, I ran 14:08 for the 5K and just about 30 flat for the 10K. So
Yeah, so this is no slouch, right.
for sure. So yeah,
Continue. Sorry.
no worries. So getting down, trying to find exercise that really made me enjoy it again, and found cycling mostly through the community. I actually was racking my brain before this conversation of how I got to know Breakfast Club, which was really my introduction to cycling here in Austin. And I can't figure it out, but it was before the pandemic. It was when there was maybe 8 or 10 people that would meet up at the Carpenter Hotel just downtown, and I actually went for the first time with my wife, now wife, a girlfriend at the time.
So we're
And
we're talking we're talking like literally the first Breakfast Club before the pandemic hit. So that is that I mean would have been a handful of people, right?
8 or so people.
Right.
And we showed up, and the first hill, we got dropped instantly. And that's the minute I knew, like, hey, this is something I really want to get good at. This is something that I like. What has now been kind of like a four-ish year long, like, dream. And again, now that I have a little bit more free time, I'm finding myself digging even deeper and getting even more obsessed. So gravel, the community, all kinds of aspects of cycling really are interesting to me, and I'm falling in love with.
Awesome. And Franco is definitely joining us on our Thursday hill climbers group rides, which are all about getting faster. So that's part of the addiction that I think most of us have. Well, great. I mean, Franco has already jumped in to start, adding to the website already, creating more content. We've 2x'd our manpower here, so I'm just so excited for what that means, what the future holds, that the potential. And I think this is a really good transition to just start sharing what my vision is for the show moving forward. And a lot of my time that I had over the summer, my family went to Vermont, and in Vermont we're literally 30 minutes from the Canadian border. You can't get much further north. It's extremely rural, and it really lends itself to unplugging. So it was pretty intense getting up there, and exhausting with our infant. But when we finally did, things really did slow down. And one of the books that I had brought with me happened to be Noah Kagan's book called $1 Million Weekend. And Noah is a buddy here in Austin who also joins the Thursday group rides almost every week. And he's got a fantastic story. He sort of built a influencer brand on his career, and the first couple missteps that he got let go from Facebook. He was the 30th employee, so his stock options, even working there for a year, would have been worth probably hundreds of millions of dollars at this point. And had similar another one or two career missteps where he was early employee at Mint. But he really has a massive social media following because he creates content that that speaks to and encourages founders and people in sales. And he's just got a great voice and great messaging. So I picked up the book, and I basically what he's writing about is the ability to create a business idea, a revenue generating business within a weekend, and kind of goes through the steps of quickly de-risking that. So as I was reading this and thinking about hill climbers, I'd had this nagging critical notion that when I would create the show, post social teasers, obviously ship the episode, I would really get overly concerned with the metrics, impressions, likes, comments, downloads, on YouTube streams. And the nagging part was, it just wasn't in line with the reason that I'm doing the show. And the reason I thought a lot about this in Vermont as I'd unplugged. I had stopped checking all my apps. The reason I'm doing the show is to connect with people in a really material way. And I just started the group ride, the weekly group ride, a couple months ago, and that I just thought was a really perfect manifestation of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get people together and start conversations and network and build friendships and build business connections. So as I was thinking about this, it became very clear that it's not about creating a show for likes or for comments or downloads. It really is creating community. So I thought a little bit about the best way to do that. And in tandem, concurrently, I just connected with a guy named Scott Baldwin in town, who has started Front Pack Sports. He literally just launched it within the last couple months, and it's a social media network for endurance athletes. So Strava is great for what it does well, which is basically posting rides and social content generated specifically around that. But what about everything else? I mean, what about improve messaging and kind of a more robust community features. So I thought, what better way to support Scott by having him on the show and start a dialogue and create real connections? What better way to do that than to have a live audience in the podcast taping? So that is one reason I haven't done a show within the last 6 or so weeks. Usually, I'm more consistent doing them monthly, because I really think this is a fantastic new avenue for the show to, I think, do things a little bit differently. And what I'm talking about is really doubling down on community building, not just online, but in real life. And I think the show's brand, the show's main thrust becomes so much stronger when we have a real life community here in Austin. And when folks visit, a lot of folks visit Austin for South by, for ACL, for a ton of different conferences. I would love for people to be able to tap into our community here, on a business perspective. If you want to just show up and do the group ride and meet Franco and I, that's fantastic. But yeah, that is a very long-winded way of saying I want to start doing more in real life with live audience tapings, and we'll continue to do the weekly group ride and see what else comes from it.
When we met for the first time and I expressed some interest in trying to help you out, I was certainly curious the direction that you were taking the podcast. There really are just a lot of cycling podcasts out there where people have maybe more resources, more experience and things like that. And so when you told me that your aha moment was to do these in-person events and really lean into the like personal connections and community building aspect, that's really what sold me on wanting to help you out. And like, something that you said that resonated with me was, the golfing community has this. Why doesn't cycling? And so I really also hope that as you build on this idea and we start to have larger and larger kind of live audiences, mingling, happy hours, things like that, more and more people trickle into the Thursday rides, and the community just builds over time. So I think you explained it very eloquently, and I'm really excited to see it happen.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, I think just to add on to reflecting on the last year and a half, it's been, it's going on, it's almost 2 years I've been doing this. People do trickle in. I mean, every week we're getting new faces on the group ride. These are folks that are definitely curious and hopefully coming back to ride with us and engage with the content. And then the show itself. I mean, really, I think one thing that I have confidently proven is that there is an audience for this, and now that we have Franco on board, there's so many more people that we can get in front of with the hey, the notion of, hey, golfers have been doing this since the 60s. Why is there not more of an opportunity for cyclists who have such a common bond? I mean, such a strong common denominator to just share experiences, and whether that's business or anything at all. The shared passion is so strong.
Yeah, do you want to get into like explaining a little bit of the logistics of what these live in-person audiences are going to look like, at least the first one?
Yeah, so for this first one, there's a fantastic studio in East Austin on Fifth Street called Just Push Record Studio, and we've gotten a green light to have a small handful, and I really do mean very small handful of guests to come in and sit in for the live taping. The second part, which is arguably more exciting, is that in the vein of getting people together, we're gonna piggyback a happy hour onto the show. So the studio is right next to Brew and Brew. The plan is to just get people together for a happy hour once the show wraps. Everyone can meet, and once again, Scott Baldwin from Front Pack Sports is going to be our first live audience guest. So yeah, everyone can meet Scott. He can share a lot more about his business and what he's building. And yeah, just a great opportunity to do something we haven't done before. I will say this: it's one thing to know a cyclist that you see, weekly in their helmet and lycra and their glasses where you can't see their eyes. It's a very different thing to opt in to spend time with that person when you're wearing civilian clothes, and it's something I get such a kick at, and I think it's a huge. And I've been riding and meeting people in 3 different cities over the last 11 years, and I think it's a missed opportunity that you don't get past the high, how are you doing, and don't go a little bit deeper with people you end up spending a lot of time with on a bike. So I am very excited about this idea. Can't wait to see who shows up and how it's received, and we'll do our best on the first one, and we'll improve. We'll continue doing it.
You mentioned a couple times how like this first one, it's going to be coming up here in a couple weeks, is going to be a relatively small audience. Do you want to speak a little to the future of what you see in terms of like larger and larger audiences from a venue perspective, and any Easter eggs that you have hiding that you want to share with the pod?
Yeah, ideally this grows and there's real interest for what we're doing, and obviously the guests that we have for a live taping. And the idea would be to take on a bigger venue where we can have a bigger audience than a small handful of people, and really like activate with brands. Um, and yes, we definitely have a very notable local venue in mind. And I don't want to get out over my skis and say too much, but it's super exciting. It's got perfect synergy with the entrepreneurial spirit and subject matter of hill climbers, and the vibe is just right. So yeah, I mean that we're gonna start here with the first one on October 9th and learn a lot, and see what can make sense to for the next one. With that said, Scott is really doing something very, very exciting. So don't want to downplay that at all. I think it'll be a fantastic interview. So Franco, did I miss anything, or do you have any questions about this notion and new direction?
You want to talk about some of the asks, Sam? So, like from a sponsorship perspective, gifts perspective, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, with the podcasts, and Franco and I have already talked about this a little bit, just as far as what my approach has been. Try not to be too precious. We don't have a ton of resources to have all the bells and whistles. So like I said, it's going to be a small audience initially. There's definitely an opportunity for sponsors to, product placement. If there's anyone listening that wants to volunteer some, beverages, snacks, whatever, that is welcome. And then, yeah, I mean, we'll with Franco on board, I think we're going to get more serious about bringing on sponsors for the show more broadly. So, anyone that wants to partner with us in all the messaging we are putting out across mostly LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube. Moving forward, we're going to kick off a newsletter. So yeah, a great opportunity to partner with us and get in front of what I think is a very desirable demographic with a lot of expendable income.
I think, like you mentioned, the newsletter is something that we're going to be working on. We already have such great content, Sam, from the 10 or so episodes you've already produced, that like we're going to be cutting through those episodes, posting them a little bit more broadly on social media. A big ask, I think, is going to be to collect emails. And so if you know people that you want to refer or recommend the podcast to, help get them to the website, help get their email in our inbox. The newsletter is going to be a great kind of first touch point, and then more and more opportunities along the way. I hope that this community is going to be one that really reflects what Sam's been talking about. Another conversation I remember having that resonated was like, hey, is it founders? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it leaders? How are we going to talk about this? And like, I thought you put it very eloquently when you kind of said it's all the whole bag and more, right? So it's people who are super passionate, people who are super engaged, people who recognize the value of helping others, and that always comes back around to help you.
Yeah, you mentioned, in some of the messaging initially, I've mentioned that the guests are founders, authors, artists, and a lot of folks, not just Franco, have asked me if that's a little bit too exclusive. And for the podcast, I thought it was important to be very specific and have a specific niche, so that we weren't like every other podcast and we could appeal to a specific listener. With live tapings, I'm excited to open it up because, to Franco's point, this is an opportunity to engage with other people. Just as an example, like executives as opposed to founders. We want to hear their stories. If they're a connector, if they're inspirational, if there's someone, and again, using Austin as an example, if there's someone that's a luminary in this community, by all means, we want to have them as a guest and maybe even create a live taping around it. So I'm very excited. I was always looking for an avenue to broaden the guest list, and this is our avenue.
I would love to talk a little bit more about the group ride. I think that's something I'm super excited about.
Great. So yeah, I haven't shared that story yet. The group ride is Thursday mornings, leaving the Meteor here in Austin at 6:45 a.m. We have changed that a number of times. For now, it's 6:45. You can take that to the bank. And the ride is inspired by the time I spent in LA. I moved there only a couple years after I'd started riding, so I was still pretty fresh. And LA has this incredible cycling community. It's a big city, obviously, so there are thousands of cyclists, and there are some very fit, fast ones. And there have been group rides for every single day of the week, and essentially Monday through Sunday, that start at a specific time, that have been going on, a lot of them for decades, so probably since the 80s. And the deal is that each day of the week has its own specific course. So you know what you are getting when you show up. It is the same ride every time, every week for decades. When I showed up to LA, I was new. Frankly, I didn't know how I stacked up. I didn't know how strong I was. And the way that I ended up both meeting people and getting fit was I would clock riders that were stronger than me, a little bit stronger than me. Every week, I would just try to stay on their wheel for a little bit longer. So again, I knew what the course was. I knew that last week I got dropped before the wall. This week, I want to get halfway up the wall before I get dropped. And it was a total blast. And it's Franco and I were talking about this addiction, very, very addictive. It motivates you to get up at 5:45 to get to the ride on any given. So what I saw in Austin was that there was a lack of group rides where consistently, and there are some, so I'm not saying there are none, but folks don't typically get together to race in the mornings before work. I don't think there are many options to get up early, get sort of spicy and competitive and then shower up and go to work. So that is the inspiration behind our Thursday group ride. We meet at the Meteor and kind of slow pedal, a little warm up going out to Lost Creek, and that's a decent workout. It's a good warm up because there are some hills. And then Lost Creek is basically, it's about a 10-minute segment, 8 minutes if you're pretty fast, and very hilly. There's 3.5 hills. So it's a great, just punchy segment to compete against people that show up, and hopefully there's a couple people that are a little bit faster than you. So, if they're showing up one week and the next week, you can try to stay on their wheel for a little bit longer. So yeah, I love this model of group rides. If I'm talking about the main reason I ride, it's sure it's social, but I also love to get workout and love to push the pace, competing with people, and it checks those two boxes. So then when we get back, I love when people can mingle, get coffee and tacos and hang out. And that is another opportunity to make new friends, make new business connections, and you never know who's going to show up.
Yeah, and it's the perfect combination of socializing, warm up pedaling, really pushing yourself, and then, like you mentioned, getting those tacos and coffee at the end of a hard workout is it opens up the aperture for what you can talk about. When you've been suffering next to somebody for 10, 15 minutes on the segment, you really know what they're made out of, and that's been a really fun part for me is getting to chat with people after the ride and learning about their stories, learning about what job they're going to or what they're up to that day or that week. One aspect you didn't talk about is some bagel prizes. So you're known to have the best bagel in Austin. Do you want to talk about how that came about?
Yeah, thank you for that reminder as well. During COVID, I was underemployed and I went down a rabbit hole. A friend who had also recently moved to Austin from New York was complaining about not being able to find a good bagel in town. And I had a lot of time on my hands, Franco. So I took it upon myself to start making bagels. And this was actually right when I moved to Austin, end of 2020, beginning of 21. And also dovetailed with Breakfast Club really getting momentum and becoming all the rage in Austin cycling. So Franco actually mentioned to me that he remembered when I did a collab with Breakfast Club. Basically, it was a bagel contest. We did, I forget which segment it was, but it was an opt-in. If you showed up for the group ride that was reported in Strava, you were put into a raffle to win bagels. And so I raffled, a lucky man and lucky woman got bagels. Um, so yeah, fast forward to present day, and I still have the recipe. I still make a really delicious bagel, and Franco and I are going to offer them up as prizes to try, to try to make things a little bit more interesting on Thursday mornings. So our first winner was Stephen Cunningham, who has been showing up a whole lot. He's someone I've become very good friends with recently over the last couple months, and he made it to Barton Creek first, so I have not made his bagels yet, but I promise I will.
Yeah, and something I remember we talked about as well related to this group ride is like the intimidation factor of it being a race, right? So like some people really shy away from putting themselves out there, and especially when there's such strong riders, Sam like yourself and Steven and others that show up to the group ride every week. And so personally, I want to encourage anybody that is passionate about cycling to show up and try their hand. There's no shame in coming in dead last. That happened to me multiple times already. So you don't die, you just get better. And surrounding yourself with people that are pushing themselves and up ahead is motivating if you really dig deep enough and find out. So that's something that I also thought was neat about the ride and that we talked about that I wanted to share.
Such a great reminder. Like the race segments are 10 minutes, so the rest of the ride is an hour and 25 minutes. And it's no drop. We're gonna go at everyone's pace. The slowest riders, we're gonna go at their pace. And like Franco said, it really, we want it to be more about showing up and meeting a bunch of friendly people and less about 2 10-minute segments.
Yeah, I think about if you draw it back to the golf analogy, right? There's those people with a plus a billion handicap, and those are people that shoot par. You can drop a ball next to a friend. I see it similar to that, right? Like the race segment, like you mentioned, is just a very short stint of the hour 40 ride. So don't be intimidated. Show up. Let's ride.
It's fun. It's fun. It's just fun. It's a fun group. Yeah. Well said, Franco. And then I think we can